Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Female Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Danni, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by Steph Smith, who specializes in helping the creatives with the struggles they commonly experience. And today's topic is going to be the prevalence of disordered eating in the performing arts and what we can potentially do to decrease the chances of people struggling with it. But first of all, Steph, could you give us a little bit of an introduction and tell us a little bit about your background in the performing arts and also then how you got into coaching?
Okay, so it kind of crosses over quite a lot. So when I was like a child, I was quite a sporty kid. So I got really into like athletics and like kickboxing. I was kind of a bit of a quote unquote like tomboy, I guess. My dad kind of pushed me with that in a good, healthy way. And then I got really interested in sort of like dancing. So I was a typical sort of girl that used to go dancing on a Saturday morning, and then it kind of increased. I used to like do a lot of dance, like I'd say 4 or 5 times a week minimum, and then I took it sort of professionally. So when I went to I started my A levels actually, and then I realized like at the time it wasn't right for me, so I ended up going to like a drama school. And now looking back, I think, God, how did I do it? Because I was 16 at the time. I was an absolute baby. I moved to a different city, and then I started my 3-year training at a drama school. So I was with like people that are, well, there was a few of the 16-year-olds, but most of them were like 18, 20, 21. So I was in sort of a very adult environment very early. And then I got some jobs professionally and I started touring, working on stage. And then I guess how I got into sort of coaching was I got in between contracts. If anyone like a performer's listening to this, I'd understand sort of like the side hustle part of the job. So, you know, you might find yourself waitressing or working on reception or working in front of house. And I think I got to the point where I was a bit fed up of doing sort of those types of jobs. And so I was like, well, I know that I'm really into fitness, so you know, why not do my PT qualification? I also got a lot of feedback of like, oh, you look like a PT, like you should be one, whatever that means. So I think that did influence me, I'm not going to lie. So I think I got into it for the right reasons, but also maybe the wrong reasons as well, attaching like an aesthetic. And dancers do have this sort of aesthetic as well. And a lot of dancers or ex-performers go into the fitness industry, which I'm sure we'll come on to. So yeah, then I started coaching, started working on the gym floor. And then I think from the pandemic, I started officially working online and then doing a lot more like nutrition coaching and behavior change. So now I'm a trainee counsellor as well. So I do a lot more of that. And my side hustle has really become my absolute main hustle, which I absolutely adore. And now I work with clients that have a similar history to me, obviously not exactly the same, but like you mentioned, I do work with a lot of performers that have that struggle themselves. So I can kind of get them from A to B, understanding what they are going through or a little bit of what they're going through. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into it really.
Yeah, I can understand that because one of my best friends, she is trying to get into acting. And so obviously she does a lot of other jobs alongside that. So completely get where you're coming from. And how long did you actually work on the gym floor for, Steph? Out of interest.
I'd say about a couple of years. So I would say, well, 2 or 3 years, but in the middle of those 2 or 3 years, I was also working abroad, like in different shows. So I wouldn't say it was a complete 2 3 years. It was kind of in chunks. So I kind of picked up and dropped it. I actually worked at like a big chain gym, Virgin Active, for the start of it. But then I also worked into like a boutique gym in London where I could kind of pick my hours a little bit. And then I had clients that were very understanding of my other job. And so, yeah, then I kind of picked it up and sort of left it as and when. Yeah, so about 2 or 3 years, I'd say.
Did you enjoy your time on the gym floor?
I did, and I definitely enjoyed meeting the types of people that I did. But if I'm being completely transparent, I really enjoy being an online coach because I feel like I'm making a lot more impact with my client's life because you can take that wider view because you can look at their nutrition, you can look at their lifestyle, and like I say, like the different behaviors and emotional sort of, I don't know, relationships, relational health, and all of that, which sounds a little bit intense, doesn't it? Like it sounds like I'm a really nosy coach, but I'm not. But you just have that wider view on their life, and then you can make I help them make those choices based on what you know as well. Whereas when you're on the gym floor, you get them for 60 minutes. And I don't know, I personally think that I make more impact online than I did on the gym floor.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. And I had that discussion with someone the other day. Like, I definitely really enjoyed my time as a one-to-one personal trainer, and also learned a lot about working with people, what cues work with different people, that sort of thing. But it's like, you either use those 60 minutes as it's just all training based, and you can't really coach them properly with stress management, lifestyle, nutrition, all of the holistic stuff that we work on, or you have a deep in-depth conversation about the other stuff and you don't get any training done. So it's like it's hard to coach people with nutrition, stress management, like all of the lifestyle stuff that makes a big difference to the progress they make in the many different areas in which we help people with.
Exactly that. Yeah, I don't think of it like that. You either go down that way or the other way, where you talk about things and you don't really get much training done, which there was a couple of clients that we used to just natter and then we're like, oh, whoops, deadlifts next. Okay.
Yeah. And then with one-to-one PT, you find that there are some clients who they want to just come and do training. Like that is absolutely what they want. And that's fine. But actually for me, and I know probably for you as well, a lot of the job satisfaction I get is from the work done outside of training.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what do we actually mean? Because obviously we help a lot of people improve their relationship with food. What do we actually mean when we refer to a relationship with food?
Yeah, it's one of those things where people are like, you can have a relationship with food, what? But we obviously hear this a lot, like it's a bit of a buzz phrase for coaches. I'd say it's like how you relate to food. So, and also it's kind of like what sort of relationship costs that you have with your food. So does it cost you a lot of time, like preoccupation with food, health, your relationship? So it may be that you attach a lot more value onto food. So when you're eating out with friends, you feel guilty afterwards because you've eaten a burger. And then that can exacerbate a poor relationship with food. It may be that you start looking at food as a reward for exercise, or that you compensate with exercise. So it can affect your relationship with exercise as well as food, as well as body. So there's many sort of things to it. I actually work with clients that have disordered eating. So this isn't a diagnosis, it's not an eating disorder. It's more of a descriptive way of explaining sort of their relationship with food and their eating patterns. So this could be like, yo-yo dieting, emotional eating, restrictive eating, and like a lot of, guilt and shame around food. And I do feel that because, it doesn't meet the requirements to have support like an eating disorder would, people often think like, well, I'm just going to let it sort itself out. And yes, some people can sort it out themselves, but from experience, you do need that external sort of coach or person that sort of understands that to help you with it. And I do think people are often left in that territory where they don't have a great relationship with food, but it's not quote unquote that bad, but they just go, well, I'm just going to just roll with it and go on to another diet. Hopefully another calorie target is going to fix my emotional eating. And it's like, lo and behold, it doesn't. So yeah, it can really affect like body image as well, which isn't related to your body. So it's kind of completely mislabeled, really. Often they come hand in hand. When a client that comes to me with a poor relationship with food, often, not always, they do have a poor relationship with themselves and their body as well.
Yeah, this is putting you on the spot a little bit, but I know you'll be fine. What is the difference between disordered eating and someone having an eating disorder?
So I would say there is many crossovers, because someone that has an eating disorder would also have disordered eating habits. I would say disordered eating, it's less intense or less frequent behaviours of, someone that has an eating disorder. Bear in mind, there's many eating disorders that you can have, but it doesn't quite reach that requirement, like the clinical requirement to get that support. So it's like I say, it's a bit more of a descriptive phrase to sort of say that you've got a restrictive way of eating or emotional eating. There's a bit of, like I say, disordered way of eating, and often, you know, people try to micromanage themselves. And often if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know if I do have it, you know, are you preoccupied by food pretty much every day? And if your answer is yes, then there's a good chance that you may be sort of, you know, in a bit of a disordered eating pattern potentially.
Yeah, I sometimes like to phrase it to people as, if your relationship with food needs work, it probably to some extent interferes with your ability to go about your day.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where it's probably a bit of a cause for concern. And then obviously from there, you can have a look at, do you meet clinical eating disorder sort of requirements or diagnosis?
Yeah.
And if not, you might be somewhere on the spectrum where you need a little bit of help, but you've not quite met that diagnostic criteria. So you might not be so far into, you know, disordered eating that you need quite an intense intervention, but you still need support.
Yeah, exactly. And like you say, it's not a diagnosis by any means, but it doesn't mean that you can't get that support. And I often actually describe it as not just a sign like, oh, are you emotionally eating frequently? Are you, you know, restricting and then overeating frequently? It's a feeling as well. It's sometimes it's a place where you kind of know that you would like to change, but it's also a place where you feel like you don't want to change because you are, it sounds a bit strange, but it's kind of comforting as well, because it's your go-to. So when I have clients